the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus / A Better Cleveland for All Cleveland City Council Ward 13 Candidates Forum. My name is Steve Halecko. I'm the political director of CCPC and one of the moderators for tonight. I want to first go over some housekeeping and then introduce the A Better Cleveland for All folks that are with us tonight. You will notice that the chat is turned off. And one of the things that we found, after like 100 Zoom meetings, is that instead of leaving the chat to put links in, we're better off sending an email the next day with all the links so that you're not going back and forth looking at the chat to see the links that you want, and you can focus on the forum, and you can look at the email at your convenience. So tomorrow you're going to get a link that says links from the Cleveland City Council Ward 13 Candidates Forum. And I'm going to tell you right now what's in it and what you can look for. First thing is going to be become a member of the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus. And every time we do one of these things, some folks aren't members. If you become a member, you will be able to vote on our endorsement for this race and a few others, which I'm going to explain in a minute, providing you are a Cleveland resident. Only Cleveland residents vote on Cleveland endorsements. You'll start getting our emails as well, but one of the things that all of our emails have at the bottom is a clear unsubscribe button. So we don't want folks who don't want to be a part of us, getting the emails, if in case you don't like what you see. There will also be a link to donate to the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus. And those of you that are our members know this, but we are all volunteer staff, all volunteer funded, and we need small contributions from average folks to keep our office open, our email server, a multitude of things. So if you could spare a little bit of money on the donate link, that would be greatly appreciated. You will also get a link to the ballot for the CCPC endorsement in this race. And that ballot will have both candidates' application and questionnaire for you to view, should you like to. It will also have a link to the YouTube video of this event. And the email we send out is actually going to folks who register and can't make it. And then when we send the email out to all of our Cleveland membership, they'll have an opportunity to view this forum before casting their ballot. There are two other Cleveland endorsements that we're kind of having a re-endorsement vote on. One is for the mayor's race. What happened is before the primary, we had an endorsement vote, and none of the candidates got 50%. So what we decided was to do a re-endorsement after the primary. And so that ballot is going to be either to approve or disapprove endorsing Justin Bibb. The other candidate in the race, whose name I will not mention, did not apply for our endorsement. So, it's just to approve or disapprove Justin's endorsement. And then also in Cleveland City Council Ward 7, Stephanie House came just short of the 50%, and her opponent as well did not apply for our endorsement. So that ballot will be to approve or disapprove Stephanie's endorsement. And one of the things that we do is all of our Cleveland members vote on all Cleveland City Council endorsements and of course the mayor's endorsement. You will also get a link to a few upcoming CCPC events. Next Monday evening, we are having our September membership meeting, and segments in that meeting include a presentation from Citizens for a Safer Cleveland, the ballot initiative that we have endorsed, a presentation about the horrible bills that are popping up in the General Assembly and the importance of trying to fight this as best we can. It's very similar to when we were doing resistance work against the Trump administration. And then we're going to talk about a committee that CCPC is forming that we're going to invite members to participate in, and that is to look at the 2022 elections, our endorsement process, and more importantly, what we can do to help our progressive candidates do well. And then in October, and this is kind of deja vu if you were with us back in 2017 with the Q renovations and referendum, it's stadium funding. Do your dollars, because it's your dollars that pay for them, actually yield the results that are promised? And we're in the process right now of getting some really good national experts as kind of a panel discussion for this. And we are planning to invite the mayor candidates for Cleveland and the county executive candidates who have announced as well. We'll see if they show up. Okay, without further ado, let me explain briefly how this candidates forum is going to work. Each of the two candidates is going to have 2 minutes for an opening statement. And then there will be 8 questions that you guys submitted. And I just want to say at the outset, you guys submitted excellent questions. You know, we've done these forums in the past, and we've got questions that are, you know, kind of ridiculous that really don't apply to even the office that people are running for. But the questions we got for this one are really good. And then there's kind of a 9th and 10th question, which it kind of like, you know, might be fun since we only have 2 candidates. We're going to give each of the candidates a chance to give a 2-minute rebuttal of the other candidates' previous answers. And they can, you know, pick multiple questions to give a rebuttal or just one, but they're going to have 2 minutes to do that. And then the last one is going to give each candidate an opportunity to ask the other candidate a question, and then we'll wrap up with a 2-minute closing statement. I would like now to introduce some folks who are here from A Better Cleveland for All, which is co-hosting with Ccpc this event tonight. And I can't see all of you on the Zoom, but kind of raise your hand when I call your name. Pat Murray. Pat's there, but I don't see his video. David Beach, Rosemary Palmer, and Nora Kelly. And I don't think Nora has made it on yet. All right, one other member of A Better Cleveland for All that is going to be my co-host this evening. I want to introduce Deb Klein, who's going to explain the timing process, and just want to give you just something about Deb's nickname. Since the Cleveland Mayor's Race Candidate Forum, she is now known, because Sam Allard and Scene Magazine dubbed her as this, as the Militant Muter. So Militant Muter, Deb Klein, please talk about how the timing is going to work.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for that introduction, and I love my new name. Anything with militant in it is good for me. So the candidates will each have 2 minutes, an opening statement, 2 minutes on the questions. I will give the candidates a 10-second warning, and then the militant muter comes in if you go over 2 minutes, because you will be muted at that point. The other thing I want to tell everyone is our chat is turned off. The share screen is turned off, so you won't be able to do the chat or the share screen. So just please sit back and enjoy, and we're going to hear from our 2 stellar candidates.
And now let's introduce them. First off, Kate Warren. Kate, please raise your hand. And Chris Harsh. Chris? All right. As far as the order, when we do these things live, we do a random draw, like who goes first or second, third, whatever, for the opening statement. We can't really do that in Zoom. So what we're going to do is we're going to go alphabetical for the opening statement. And then we're going to reverse the order for the questions. So we'll actually have 12 segments. So each candidate will have 6 times where they go first and 6 times where they go second. So for the opening statement, Chris, you are up first.
Hello, and thank you for having me. Thank you everybody for being here tonight. For my opening statement, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Chris Harsh. I'm a 44-year-old father of 3 living here with my wife and our children in Old Brooklyn. We also have a dog, a cat, and a frog. I came here from Canton, Ohio in 1998. I immediately hooked up with some activists in town, some Food Not Bombs activists. We help prepare food for the homeless, shared it on public school every Sunday for 5 years. I got involved in the Independent Media Center, which created the first sort of citizen-led journalism online. And I was heavily involved in protesting the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. I was very discouraged when protesting didn't work, so I ended up one day on a bus headed for Philadelphia, where I trained for 4 months to become a community organizer with Acorn. Acorn focused on grassroots, direct action, community-based organizing. And I learned power analysis, and I learned direct action organizing from them, which kind of changed my life. I eventually become the head organizer of Acorn 5 years later, where we helped save hundreds of people's homes. We registered 240,000 people to vote in the state of Ohio, raised the minimum wage, helped elect the last Democratic governor of Ohio. Hopefully not the last, but the most recent one we had. I was also an organizer for Stand Up for Ohio, where we defeated Senate Bill 5, and an organizer for the American Federation of Teachers, helping charter school teachers organize. In the last 7 years, I've been a little bit absent from political activity because I've been raising my family. I am the housing director at Metro West Community Development Office, where I've been for 7 years. I help people deal with the City Hall, I help people get problems solved, and that's why I'm running for office. I've seen that people need help when they are trying to get things done. I understand how frustrating it is when you work all day and all you want to do is build a deck and people give you a hard time and grief about it. I've also stood up to the mayor. I've stood up to city council members. I've stood up to banks. I understand that people need somebody who's going to fight for them. That's what I'm prepared to do. And with 10 seconds left, I will thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Kate Warren.
Good evening, CCPC. As a member of the Progressive Caucus, it's an honor to be here tonight seeking your endorsement and your support. My name is Kate Warren, and I am running for City Council in Ward 13. I'm running for office because I love our community, I love our neighborhood and our city, and I believe we have a bright future, but we have to fight for it. I want to work hard to build local government that works for people. When I was a freshman at Cleveland State living downtown, I began to see firsthand the challenges that are facing our city. I met people who were experiencing homelessness on the streets outside of my dorm, and I saw the devastating impacts of poverty on our community. I knew I wanted to help, and so I got a job working with men, women, and children who were experiencing homelessness. That job taught me so much about the deep systemic problems that are facing Cleveland. And while it was incredibly fulfilling and challenging work, I found myself feeling like I was passing out Band-Aids while there was a gaping wound in our community. Problems like homelessness, poverty, and racism can't be solved by direct service alone. And it was my interest in tackling those big picture issues in Cleveland that led me to my current job, doing research and public policy work. What my breadth of experience has taught me is that through hard work, collaboration, and good public policy, we can make progress on tough issues like poverty, public health, and increasing government transparency. I'm running for City Council because I want to fight to improve the lives of all Clevelanders. One of the things that I think will serve me well and serve this community well when I'm elected is that I have compassion for the person and the need that is right in front of me, which is reinforced by my background in direct service work. And I have the ability to think about and work on the bigger picture issues that are so important. So thanks for being here, and I look forward to all of your questions tonight.
Thank you, Kate. So our first question, and Kate, you will go first, and then Chris. What should City Council do to promote and support public transportation in Cleveland?
Thank you for the question. Public transportation is an issue that is really important to me and that I would prioritize from City Council. One thing I think that the City of Cleveland should look at locally is a program that would fund and support free public transit for low-income riders in Cleveland. I think that would do a couple things. It would increase ridership, it would increase access to jobs, and increasing ridership is good for our environment. It helps reduce reliance on cars. And, you know, I think when we have those increased riders, when we have that increased base of people who are using public transit all the time, then we can also start to work on increasing service levels. And, you know, I think public transportation is a mode of transportation that many people in our city rely on, and we want more people to choose it as an option. Another thing I think we can look at is doing things to make the tipping point a little bit better so that folks will choose transit when they have that option. So, you know, I think we could look at a tax for parking downtown. Maybe if the rates of parking were just a little bit higher, it would be that tipping point that we need for folks to make that decision and start using public transit as their regular mode of transportation. So those are some of the things I would look at.
So this is a great question, and this is where I like to add my disclaimer that I do not believe in campaigning with a magic wand. I know it's a very popular thing for a lot of people running for office to talk about how they're going to, you know, fix a lot of different problems. The problem with public transportation in Cleveland is that we don't have a municipal infrastructure for public transportation. The Regional Transit Authority, RTA, is not a city function. It's regional, it's outside our scope. Somebody asked me about bus stops, and I said, you know, the city can't invest in bus stops because we don't control where the bus stops. What we can do, and we have been doing very successfully, I think, is promoting our infrastructure for bicycles. So I found myself one day with a car that didn't run and I couldn't fix it, and it sat in my yard for a while until the brakes clenched. And then the car didn't run for a couple of months, and then the car became too expensive to repair. And for a couple of years, I ended up riding my bike every single place in this city. I used the racks on the front of the bus. I used the side of the street, and I lived in Tremont and worked in Cleveland Heights. So I know what it's like to wake up and have to check the weather to figure out how you're getting to work and back. One thing we can do is help make our bicycle infrastructure safer and easier to use. We've been doing a pretty good job of getting bicycle paths off the street. And as a cyclist, you know the most dangerous thing in your world is a car. Every time we can put a new bicycle path in the city of Cleveland that is separated from the streets, we make bicycling a lot more attainable, easier, and safer. And I am all about plugging Old Brooklyn into those existing infrastructural paths. We have a huge project coming up on Fulton Road. Fulton Road, if you haven't driven down, is a nightmare. It is 4 lanes, supposedly, of just people bumper to bumper and right next to each other. We're going to have to repave that, and a dedicated separated bike lane that is not part of the traffic, but is actually separated by a barrier, not Jersey barriers, but some kind of like green barrier would be nice, to encourage more people to use the bike in a safe way. And I think that's my 10 seconds.
The next question is, what will you do to address poverty in Ward 13? And Chris, you are up first.
Unmute. Yes, fantastic. I love this because I have spent my whole life fighting poverty. So poverty is quite simply the condition where people don't have enough money. There is no more to poverty. People that have tons of money are not poor. We need to do a couple of things. One, we need to provide clean, safe, and affordable housing for people in the neighborhood so that people that are low income don't have to suffer the indignities of slumlords. I have fought slumlords all the way to housing court and all the way to jail, and I will make getting them my #1 priority as a councilman, because that is something, there's no magic wand involved in that. I've done it before and I'll do it again. We also need to make sure that the services that low-income families rely upon are easily accessible within our community. We have, where I used to work, we used to have what's called a benefit bank. You could come in, you could get checked for programs for your gas, your electric, for water utility, for every utility we have, as well as SNAP and other emergency programs. We need to make sure that those types of services are available to our residents on a very, very commuter-friendly basis. Low-income people oftentimes don't use cars. We just talked about transportation. They oftentimes have to walk to get to where they need. So we have to make sure that A, people aren't being taken advantage of by slumlords and destroying their quality of life. B, that we have enough good, safe, clean, affordable housing for them. And C, that we have the access to the services that they need. Beyond that, ending poverty is the process of putting enough money in people's pockets so that they're not poor anymore, so that they can achieve a financial stability that they previously don't have. That is a huge issue. That is a national issue, and dare I say global issue. We have to work with partners to solve these problems. One council person is not going to end poverty in Ward 13. We don't have poverty because we failed to elect the right person in the past. There's been plenty of good people. We have to make sure, though, that our partners on the state and the county level are at our side here in Old Brooklyn and Ward 13, so that when we have programs to bring jobs and job training to the community, we can plug our neighbors into those immediately. That's all.
Thank you, Chris. Kate?
Thanks for the question. Poverty, in my view, is one of the most serious challenges that's facing the city of Cleveland. We cannot succeed as a city as long as so many of our neighbors are struggling to make ends meet. It's bad for our people, it's bad for our economy, it's bad for our tax revenue. Sometimes when I'm talking to folks in the community about poverty, I get a little bit of pushback because Old Brooklyn as a neighborhood has lower poverty than the city overall. But the reality is that still almost a quarter of Ward 13 residents live in poverty. Almost a third of kids in Ward 13 live in poverty. So it's an issue that's impacting residents right here in Ward 13. And the reality is that when we get strategic about reducing poverty citywide, we also lift neighborhoods like Old Brooklyn. Chris is right. Ultimately, the only way to decrease poverty is to increase income, which means that we need to do the work to get folks access to jobs that pay a living wage. Obviously, there are really complex challenges that face us, but I believe that the city government can implement policy changes that would serve to increase job access and decrease poverty. Some of the things I think we need to look at are investing in more in our public schools, and again, working with our partners at the state and figuring out the right funding formula, but investing in our public schools so that every Cleveland kid has access to a high quality education and that we're preparing kids for jobs that pay a good wage and that are available in Cleveland. We need to invest in workforce development programs in the city, be it job training programs with employer partnerships. We can build on work that's already happening in Cleveland and scale it up to increase job access in Cleveland. Also, I would say we need to increase public transit access. We need to explore those models and funding streams like I talked about, where we can help fund transit for low-income riders. What if you were on unemployment, you had free public transit? That would help connect you to jobs.
Thank you, Kate. The technical person couldn't unmute. So our next question is, what would you do to improve public safety in Ward 13? And our first person to answer will be Kate.
Thanks for the question. I think that we need to get really serious about safety in our community. It's concerning so many of our residents that I've talked to on doors. And I think safety includes crime and gun violence, which are real concerns here in Old Brooklyn and all over Cleveland. And it also includes the safety of our neighborhood kids when they're playing in their front yard and they have cars speeding down their street. It includes safety for bicyclists and pedestrians. It includes safety for people who have mental health challenges. Safety is really a big issue that we need to address. Some of the things that I think we need to look at in Cleveland, first, are that we should have a safety response that matches the issue that folks are experiencing in the community. So there are times when we need a police response, an EMS response, a fire response. I think there are also times where we need a mental health response. When I was working at a homeless shelter, I frequently saw times where there was someone in a mental health crisis and police were called and the situation escalated in a way that was unhelpful. So I think we need to get serious about looking at that in Cleveland. I think we need to look at opportunities to take certain things off of the plates of police officers, like responding to nonviolent mental health calls, responding to code enforcement calls. There are other people in our community who could do those jobs, and police officers could focus on solving and addressing crime in the community. I think we need to also invest in things that create efficiencies for the police department and keep community members and officers safe. One of those things I'd like to look at is automated speed enforcement. We can't have traffic cams in Cleveland, but we could have an officer with a radar gun sending automated tickets. It would save a police interaction, it would save time, it would save money, and it would help to enforce speeding on our streets, which I know from many of our residents who live on main streets is a concern for folks.
Thank you, Kate. Chris?
Okay. So yeah, I've knocked on 5,500 doors and talked to 2,500 of our neighbors, and safety comes up every single day on every single street, no exceptions. And as Kate said, a third of our neighborhood children are in poverty and a quarter of our neighborhood is, but over half of our neighborhood is what you would call middle class or working class or better. And these people don't feel like they have to live here. They have told me time and time again that they choose to live here, and if they don't feel safe, they will move. What's important about safety, crime is a stat, but safety is a feeling. It's an emotion. It's whether or not when you go to bed, if you feel like you're going to be okay. And it doesn't matter if you're statistically in a low crime area if you don't feel safe. So we have to figure out ways to not only make sure that the neighborhood is a safe place to live, but then convey that emotion and that feeling to the people that live here. My wife and I bought our house because we know that where we live, our kids can go play with the neighbors and ride their bikes up and down the street, and it's okay. We do not live in a crazy, violent, weird part of the world where we fear for our children. But there are a lot of people on the doors that tell me, Chris, you're nuts. I can't do that in my part of Old Brooklyn. My kids aren't safe. And Kate's right. Speeding is a major issue. I hear it all the time. I'm not in favor of automated ticketing. I'm in favor of traffic calming. Lakewood did some really, really interesting experiments on this, where they staggered the side of the street that you park on, forcing the lanes to sort of shift as you drive down the street, which means that you're going to have to face some oncoming traffic. It freaks people out. It causes them to slow down organically. We could also look at ways to turn intersections into roundabouts by planting trees in the middle of them. It's a long story, but Chicago did it. It worked. And we could come up with some other tactics around speed bumps are very unpopular because snowplows aren't meant to be bouncy. They're meant to be rigid. But we could do rumble strips, the things on the side of the highway to get people's attention, or even speed table or speed humps.
10
but
seconds.
we have to make sure that what we're doing is conveyed to the people that live here, because if people don't feel safe, it won't matter.
Thank you, Chris. The next question is, what will you do to promote diversity and inclusion during your term as a member of council? Chris, you are up first.
Es un issue muy importante en nuestra comunidad. Yo trabajo en esta comunidad para 10 años y yo hablo español. Es importante, es mi lengua segunda, pero cuando necesito comprender más o menos, ¿sí? So knowing who our community is and being able to communicate with them is a very good first step. I've been in this neighborhood for 17 years working with our Latino communities. I speak to them. If I find a little old lady from Puerto Rico and she didn't learn English, I can say, por favor, señora, hable despacio. And if she slows down, I can hang. That's really important because we are the fastest growing, we are the fastest diversifying community in the city of Cleveland, and it's heavily Latino. And as we all know, hopefully, Puerto Rico is a legal entity. People come back and forth all the time. They don't have to be here. They don't have to learn English, and a lot of our Puerto Rican community doesn't speak English, and that's cool. But diversity has to be baked into everything we do. We can't sprinkle it on top afterwards and say that we care. I've met a lot of our African-American neighbors who are living here because, again, Old Brooklyn is a place where they can live in a clean, safe, and quiet neighborhood, and they want to keep it that way. But also a lot of mixed race couples who felt that this was a good, safe place to raise their kids. We need to encourage homeownership opportunities so that people can find their future, their long-term future in Old Brooklyn. And we need to continue to build to support those community building exercises, events, the pop-ups, the shutting down streets. I'm a big fan of block parties because it allows neighbors to come out and get to know each other. And I feel that once people know their neighbors, they're not scared of their neighbors. People are typically leery of each other when they don't know each other. And so sometimes when I'm out there on the street, somebody will say, well, that person over there, that's a rental and that's a Section 8. And I'll get over there and it'll be some dude I've known for 20 years. And I'm like, this is a great guy. You should, let me go introduce you to the neighbor across the street who you don't know. They're old, a little bit jumpy, but we just need to spend more time with each other and then encourage home ownership.
Thank you, Chris. Kate?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Old Brooklyn is a diversifying community here on my block. About half of the residents of my block are Puerto Rican, and we have some great, establishments in the neighborhood that are owned by immigrants, and just a diversity of restaurants and stores here in our community, which I always really appreciate. But that's not the end of the story. I think in lots of cases, white folks like me can appreciate the food of another culture, but can be leery of people that they don't know and that they don't understand. And so I agree with Chris. I think we need to do more community building. We need to do more having hard conversations. And I think as we're having this hard conversation in our community about about public safety, we also need to address the fact that different people in our community need different things to feel safe. For some people, a high police presence makes them feel safe, and for other people, a high police presence makes them feel concerned. And so I think we need to do a better job of bringing folks to the table to talk about what true community safety looks like and find, you know, a shared vision of that so that everyone feels welcomed. I think another thing is that we need to continue to preserve affordable housing here in the neighborhood. Old Brooklyn housing values have been going up, but it is, I think, a neighborhood that a lot of folks see as a place where they can maybe take a step up and they can still afford to own a home. And we need to make sure that we're doing work to give folks access to loans to buy a house and to build a life here in Old Brooklyn and do the work to make them feel welcomed.
Our next question, and we'll start with Kate and then go to Chris. What do you think should be done to improve parent and community participation in the Cleveland Public Schools?
Yeah, you know, I really appreciate that question, and I think my first step in that will be to really plug into our local neighborhood schools here in Old Brooklyn and hear from teachers and even students what they think we need in our neighborhood and try to make those connections and pathways with parents. I think we have a good opportunity with you know, having a Say Yes school here in the neighborhood at William Rainey Harper, where we have lots of people who are working on connecting families to wraparound services. I think a lot of times we hear this story of a big problem in our schools is that parents aren't engaged in their kids' education, but I think we need to consider the reality that many parents are facing so many issues at home that it's not necessarily that they don't care that they're not involved in their kids' education, but we need to be able to give them the resources and the support that they need to then be able to check in and be more involved at school. You know, it's not the same world where every dad is going to work from 9 to 5 and every mom is at home with kids. We often have single moms who are working full-time jobs during the day and can't participate in events at school during the day. And we just need to be mindful of that and find ways for them to connect and be connected with our schools at a time and in a place that works for them.
Thank you, Kate. Chris?
So all three of my children go to CMSD. They're all enrolled at Campus International, which is actually downtown. And I may not be the only candidate running for city council that sends their children to public school, but I'm probably the only one that sends 3 children to public school. So this is a very important issue for me and my family. There's a couple things we can do to encourage participation. One, we should be on the mountaintop singing the praises of CMSD. CMSD has done what we thought was impossible in an urban setting. They have created a K through 12 system that keeps up with the best of the best suburban schools. Now, I think most of us are public school products. Most of us went to some kind of probably suburban public school or urban public school, and we have our opinions of schools based on that experience. But there are about 55 K through 8s in Cleveland and about a dozen high schools. If you understand how the system works and you pursue a school for your kids, you can go from K through 12 at a high-ranked, high-performing public school all the way through to graduation. And John Hay is ranked in the top 20. And where my kids go, the International Baccalaureate program has now been expanded to William Rainey Harper here in Old Brooklyn, which is fantastic. We also have to support the charter schools, which a lot of parents support, and we can't really turn our back on them. One thing I want to do is I'm a real estate agent. I understand that steering is illegal and a violation of law, but real estate agents educate home buyers about schools all the time. I want to get all the real estate agents in town, in the neighborhood together to explain how open enrollment works. CMSD doesn't work like it used to. You don't just go to the nearest school to where your house is. You pick the school your kids go to, and you can pick really high performing schools. So CMSD has done a fantastic job. We need to promote them, support them, educate our neighbors and the people selling houses in the neighborhood. On top of the fact that we have great schools, we're throwing in free college. Let me repeat that, free college. If you're a parent, saving $60,000 on your kid's college education might offset the cost of your house. Think about that. I have 3 kids. That's $180,000.
10 seconds.
That is no joke. And we need to make sure the real estate agents know how to explain that to people that are thinking about buying houses in our neighborhood.
Thank you, Chris. Next question. What role will community organizing, specifically block clubs and civic associations, play in your role as member of council? And Chris, you are up first.
Love it. Okay, so I was a community organizer for a long time, and I believe in community organizing as a matter of principle and as a matter of the way that I live my life. Community organizing does a couple of different things. One is it promotes leadership skills. I've never been a big fan of the block club model because I find that it's too small. If you just go from one stop sign to the other stop sign, and you say, okay, everybody in this very small area, you're only going to get a couple of people. And then typically it becomes very provincial and they become, you know, very much, this is my club. And if you've got bad blood with one or two neighbors, the whole thing can just fall apart before you even get started. I like many blocks in a club. I like, you know, a good 10 block area, preferably a part of town that's got obvious, you know, geographical, you know, separations, like a major road or a stream or something. But I think that we need community organizing that does leadership development. Too much community organizing is people getting together to complain about a problem for an hour and then they go home, they don't do anything. Good community organizing develops leadership and then holds people in power accountable. I have taken so many residents to the offices of city council members or the mayor. I once went to the mayor's city hall with sleeping bags because we were going to live there until the mayor could get led out of our houses. And the mayor came down. We actually pulled Frank Jackson out of his office down into the middle of city hall because we were organizing our community. And that type of thing has really huge impact. I welcome it. I embrace it. I would love to see it happen. I would be there with bells on if somebody did some really serious community organizing in the neighborhood. How much time do I have? I'm sorry.
42 seconds.
Okay. The other thing that community organizing does is it plugs people into the big issues, because usually when you go down a street, the first thing people bring up is the first thing they see. It's the potholes, the street light that's out, it's the garbage can that's broken. But once you get past that surface layer, the issues are bigger. They get into, you know, I'm out $800 because my healthcare was no good, or my car broke down and I can't afford to get to work and I had to lose a $12 an hour job and now I'm working 10 hours because I can walk. We need to get people into community organizing just so that we can get past those surface issues that people
10
start with
seconds.
and get them into the deeper issues that are more impactful for the community. So I would love to work with community organizers in Old Brooklyn.
Thank you, Chris. Kate?
Thanks for the question. You know, Old Brooklyn has, you know, a long tradition and history of block clubs that are very hyper local. And what I found as I've been canvassing is that a lot of people have a very faded crime watch sign in their window. And at one time they had an active block club on their street, but there's been so much turnover and things like that that it's sort of faded away. And I think, you know, maybe the days of having those hyper-local block clubs are behind us, but I think we certainly need robust community organizing in our community. I really like what the Old Brooklyn CDC has been doing with the Neighbor Up model here in the neighborhood. They have these neighborhood marketplaces where people come. It got a little hard to organize during COVID, but people come and they come with either something to share or something that they need. And it's sort of this acknowledgement that everybody in the community has something to offer each other, and that we can share in those resources together. And I think we could, you know, build that kind of thing up and do more to promote it in the neighborhood. Another thing that I really want to go to work on here in Old Brooklyn is some organizing around drug and addiction problems in the neighborhood. Something that I know is present on many streets in our neighborhood is you know, drug dealing and people who are addicted to drugs. And the opioid crisis has hit our neighborhood in a serious way. When I was talking to some firefighters, you know, and EMS, they talk about how many calls they go on for overdoses and how often they're using Narcan. And so I would really like to organize a community drug task force where we bring together mental health providers, behavioral health providers. We have recovery resources right in our neighborhood. We have Metro Health in our neighborhood. We have a faith community that has AA and NA meetings. And we have community members who are interested in getting involved in this. So I would like to organize and come up with some creative solutions around drug problems.
Thank you, Kate. Our next question is, what will you do to guarantee that the lead safe certificate program is successfully implemented in Cleveland? And we're going to start with Kate.
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, we had so much activism in Cleveland around around lead in homes and unsafe housing. In fact, my next door neighbors this year during the pandemic had their house completely painted inside and out to clean up the lead that was in their home. But that was after they had had a placard on their house for over a year and a half, and they have 4 little kids who were had elevated lead levels. And so we can't wait anymore to clean up lead in houses in Cleveland. And things got delayed by the pandemic, but I think that is a good reason why we should put some of this American Rescue Plan funding that's coming into the city into lead cleanup and expedite this process and really do the work of cleaning up lead in houses all across the city. The reality is that while we wait to do it, children are being lead poisoned, which leads them to have lifelong issues. So it's really an urgent problem. And I think City Council needs to continue to push on this issue. We need to push for more funding. We need to hold the administration accountable to implementing on the plan. And we need to help facilitate it in our neighborhood when we know that there are houses where kids are being poisoned by lead.
Thank you, Kate. Chris?
Okay, great. So I'm a state licensed lead risk assessor. I am the person enforcing the lead safe registry in Cleveland. I deal with the landlords. They call me, I go out, I talk to them, I look at their units, and I do the actual dust wipes and send them off to our lab in Michigan. I was also been part of this issue for 15 years. Lead's not new. We've known about this for decades. Well, really for hundreds of years. I mean, the Romans knew about this. The Egyptians knew about this. So lead is not a new issue. The problem with dealing with lead problems is education. So when I go into a unit, I'm talking to the tenant, I'm talking to the landlord, and I'm doing this multiple times every single day, explaining to them how the dust from the paint on their walls is getting into their children and affecting the way their neurons develop in early childhood. We need to, right now, the only way that the lead safe certification is enforced by the city of Cleveland is through eviction court, believe it or not. If you go to evict a tenant and you don't have that certificate on file, the judge is going to tell you to leave and come back when you have the lead safe certification. Until then, you can't evict. So that's an interesting, very clever way to enforce it. But we have to be a little bit more proactive than that. We can't wait for a tenant to get into that problem with their landlord. We could look at fines for not having it. As we roll out, we're finding lots of people really struggling to get this done on time. There is, unfortunately, a burgeoning industry trying to make money off of this. We always knew it was a problem. I've worked with Kim Foreman in the Environmental Health Watch on this as we sort of piloted the program a couple of years ago in Clark Fulton with the Latino community to make sure that we were able to bridge the language barriers as well. I'm not sure how much money we need to put into making homes safe as how we get out to more people faster, because it's explaining to them what the problem is. That really the education component is really where we stop lead poisoning. Making the home safe is the tail end of
10
that,
seconds.
but explaining to them people how their wood windows, how their kids ingest lead and it becomes a problem. That's where the real reduction happens.
Thank you, Chris. The next question. What is your plan to hold slumlords accountable for the conditions in their rental properties? Chris?
Did I send you these questions? This is my reason for existing. Okay, slumlords. All right, it's code enforcement, folks. I know it's not the sexiest answer to the question, but here's what we do. I have done the most successful code enforcement in the city of Cleveland as the housing director at Metro West. I did it by looking at every single house without knowing who owns it. I go door by door by door and I write down every single problem with the house that you can see from the street. I'm not getting ticky-tacky. I'm looking for windows and roofs. I send letters to 100% of the homeowners. And if you don't have any violations, I thank you for being great and let you know that I'm here if you need my help. If you're a homeowner and you have violations, then my letters are very kind in asking you if you need help, because we have a dozen programs and ways to help homeowners, especially if they're low income or elderly. But if you're an investor and you own a house in our neighborhood and you're not maintaining that house, I am going to come at you with everything we've got, because you can never cry poor when you're a property investor. You're only one sale away from having the liquid funds you need to fix up the house that I'm talking about. So I use code enforcement to remind investors that they have a responsibility to maintain the quality of life and living in our neighborhood. Violations issued by the city of Cleveland are punishable by $5,000 a day out of compliance. A lot of people don't know that. And when I sent letters out to investors about this, and I did this off Denison, which is more problems than we have and bigger problems than we have down here in Old Brooklyn, 40% of the investors that I sent letters to fixed every single thing in the house off a $1 letter on the exterior. Fantastic. Another 40% fixed part of it. And the 20% that didn't respond, they exposed themselves as my absentee slumlords. Those are the ones that I went after. I was able to help hundreds of homeowners. I was able to go after dozens of slumlords. And code enforcement is our meticulous house by house by house, block by block by block. Now there's 11,000 houses in Ward 13. And if I divide them into chunks of 500, that's 22. I need 3 days every 2
10
months.
seconds.
Chunk of 500. So I'm gonna need 4 years to complete this project. But I guarantee you that if we do this, Old Brooklyn's gonna be looking a lot better in 10 years.
Thank you, Chris. Kate?
Yeah, slumlords and absentee landlords are a big problem here in the neighborhood. We have a problem with, housing in Old Brooklyn, especially when people are aging out of housing and they've maybe lived in the house for 50 years. The housing quality has declined a little bit, and that house is vulnerable when that person needs to move out to being scooped up by an out-of-state investor or an LLC that's not really interested in maintaining the property in the right way. One of the things that I would like City Council to look at is some legislation that some suburbs, including the city of South Euclid, have implemented that allows the city to hold accountable not just homeowners but property managers for the care and maintenance of their property. And one of the things I think that would do is it would make it harder for these big investors to do business in Cleveland. I think we need to pass some strategic policy that can help address this problem and match that with the on-the-ground work of going to those homes and finding out the resources that folks might need who live in those homes to get them up to code. Another thing that I think we should take seriously in the city is finding some funding for code enforcers in the neighborhood. We used to have it through CDBG funding in Cleveland. And here in Old Brooklyn, we don't have a particular person whose job that is. And I think you can see the evidence of that in the neighborhood that has slipped. A lot of times residents will call and tell you if there's an issue with a house on their street, but we need to have the resources to send somebody out to work with the person who lives there, to work with other entities that can help to try to connect people to resources that can get that home fixed up. And I think doing that strategically positions us for the future because our housing stock will be better cared for.
Thank you, Kate. Now we've come to the time where each of you are going to have an opportunity to either expand on a previous answer that you've given or rebut something that the other of you said during our forum. We are going to start with Kate and then we'll go to Chris and you will have 2 minutes.
Thanks. I want to go back to something that Chris said in his response to the very first question, which is that he doesn't campaign with a magic wand. When I'm talking to residents, I often try to really set expectations of what City Council can and cannot do. But when it comes to making strategic public policy choices that are going to move our city forward, I think that it is a lack of political will and not a lack of resources that doesn't allow us to do the things that we're talking about. I think Cleveland City Council and City Hall has found ways to fund all sorts of big projects that benefit developers and people who are looking to make money in Cleveland. We need to flip our priorities. Our priorities need to be the people of Cleveland, not the people who are looking to make money in Cleveland. And if we do that, then we can find the political will and find the dollars in the budget to fund the types of things that we're talking about. I think prevention is better. A pound of prevention is better than I got the phrase wrong, but you know what I mean. We need to invest money in preventative programs, crime prevention, preventing the kinds of decline that we're seeing in parts of our city. And if we don't do that, then we're missing out on an opportunity to set our city up for success in the future.
Thank you, Kate. Chris.
Well, I agree with Kate on that last point. And I think that sometimes it is political will and sometimes it is resources. And I love the idea of participatory budgeting so that residents can look for the fat in the budget and let me know where it is. I would love to have thousands of people pouring through the Cleveland municipal budget to let us know what parts we can reduce from. But I want to get to the code enforcement because I think this is a really important issue. So I know Sally Martin very well. She's the housing director in South Euclid. And I work with her in a subgroup of VAPAC that, long story, which we call the bad actors, which focuses on slumlords. And what South Euclid is doing is an idea that we've talked about in our group a lot, which is going after the property managers. And I know that Kate talked about this, but I want to expand on it. In the state of Ohio, if you don't live in the state, if you're an LLC from out of state, if you're, find them, flip them, and flee from Texas, and you own 30 houses in Cleveland, you're supposed to, by law, have a broker manage your properties. You have to be a licensed broker, which is, I'm a real estate agent. I understand how this works, but they're licensed by the state of Ohio. There is nowhere in the city of Cleveland where the broker has to register that they're managing those properties. I want to add to the rental registry a line for the broker where I want their license number on that rental registry so we know exactly who is supposed to be in charge of maintaining this property. If Find Them, Flip Them, and Flee in Texas can't fix the gutters, then I need to know which property management company is going to. That's one piece of legislation that they're exploring in South Euclid. And I know this because I talked to them about it and we're part of the group that came up with this. Another one is that the city ought to be able to cite that property management company in the violation notice. Right now, they only cite the out-of-state LLC who can just flip the property to a new LLC and bam, problem solved. The city has to go out there and issue a whole new violation notice. So those two pieces of legislation we need to do. And the third would be lovely to get the violation to stick to the property, not the owner. But I agree that there does need to be new will. Somebody told me once that the biggest problem at City Hall is a lack of enthusiasm.
10 seconds.
I promise you that if elected, I'm not going to have any lack of enthusiasm to solve our problems.
Steve?
The last question, this is kind of unique. We've never tried this before, but I think it's going to be kind of fun, is we're going to give each candidate the opportunity to ask the other candidate a question. So Kate, since Chris is up first, would you like to ask Chris a question?
Sure, yes. Chris, I am curious if there is one thing that you have changed your mind about since launching your campaign.
Is this 2 minutes as well? We're
Yeah.
2 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. I have changed my mind, and I don't want anybody in this call to run screaming with horror. I've changed my mind about Trump voters. 42% of Old Brooklyn voted for Donald Trump, and I've talked to 2,500 people. So statistically speaking, I've talked to 1,000. I found that they fall into a couple of different types of columns and categories. And there are some that are just, they scream at me for stealing the election. They tell me to get off their porch and they despise me and I can't do anything to help them. There are some who are old school Republicans. They voted for Voinovich. They're anti-choice. That's just who they are. And I'm not going to change them. There is another column of people in our neighborhood that voted for Donald Trump that I've gotten to know this year. And I think it's really important for the next council person to be able to build bridges with this part of our community because, again, they're 40%. It's the disaffected working class. It's people who feel like the Democrats have forgotten them because we talk about other issues that aren't relevant to them. When we talk about Black Lives Matter, we're right. When we talk about transgender issues, we're right. When we talk about environmental issues, we're right. But that's not their daily lives. They're not seeing that. And what they're seeing is some of the issues that we also talk about, a lack of healthcare, a lack of good jobs, a lack of opportunity to see it. We are experiencing a phase in American history right now where working class whites are capable of seeing their children do worse than they are doing while watching themselves do worse than their parents. A big chunk of it is the loss of union jobs and high wages. And that community, which I've had a chance to talk to a lot, I didn't understand how personal it was to them. I'm not saying that I clearly don't agree with their vote, but we need to build bridges within our community. And I have found that one thing that holds every single person together in Old Brooklyn, whether you're Black, white, or Latino, Democrat, Republican, or no party, is that you want to live in a neighborhood that's clean, that's safe, and that's peaceful. And those three issues have come to me so much. I couldn't believe how much commonality and agreement there is. So that's the one thing that I've really sort of changed my mind about. I understand them a lot better now.
Thank you, Chris. Now it's your turn to ask Kate a question.
Okay, there. Kate, so I thought a lot about this and I didn't quite, I'm still not sure what question I should ask you, but I'll ask you this one. There is a situation brewing on the corner of Memphis and Pearl. There's a church where we have our farmers market every Saturday, a fantastic event that brings lots of people together and it's awesome. But that church has some architectural structural issues. And there are some people in the neighborhood that want to preserve it at all costs, and some people in the neighborhood that want to tear it down at all costs, and some people that are on the fence. And I'm curious, as it's going to be probably the next biggest development issue in Old Brooklyn, how you feel about the, the church and the building situation happening there on Memphis and Pearl.
Yeah, thanks for the question. From what I know of St. Luke's Church, it has some very serious structural problems that will make the building very hard to preserve and to repair. That said, I have not been intimately involved with the discussions about that building, and I would like to see the numbers when it comes to what it would take to renovate that building and put it into productive reuse in the neighborhood. I really am sympathetic to what a lot of residents, especially residents who live nearby St. Luke's and who have seen it for many decades, what they feel when they think about that building coming down. They remember the theater on Pearl Road that was torn down. They remember the buildings that used to be where CVS is on the corner, and they know what they got, which was sort of like a suburban development of a Family Dollar and a CVS that don't really add any character to the neighborhood. And so I think if there's a way to make the numbers work to have a productive reuse of that building, that we should do that. And I think if those numbers don't work, then we need to have a very amazing community event where people can take a brick home and we can honor the legacy of St. Luke's and do our best to work with developers to make sure that what goes there next preserves the character of the neighborhood and contributes to the neighborhood with the use that we choose for that corner.
Okay, and now we are on the closing statements. And now is the time that you can leave everyone with last thoughts of you and your campaign. So we are going to start with Kate.
Well, I want to thank CCPC again for putting this together, and thanks to Chris for participating. I thought it was a good discussion. I really believe that Cleveland is at an inflection point. Voters all over Cleveland realize that we cannot continue on the path that we are on. Cleveland is behind our peer cities in so many areas, and it is time to have forward-thinking leadership. We've talked about a lot of issues tonight. We've covered a lot of ground. City Council will be called upon to work on all of them. I believe I have the right experience and the right temperament to do this job effectively. Over the course of my nonprofit career in Cleveland, I've earned a reputation as a leading voice on issues facing the city. I've worked with small and large nonprofits, city departments, and government agencies to make strategic, data-driven decisions about how to best serve the community. In my free time, I've dedicated volunteer energy to engaging voters, improving health in Old Brooklyn, and helping residents recycle and compost, and many more community initiatives that are near to my heart. I do this work and I'm running for office because I care about people and I care about community building. I am proud to have earned the endorsements of many local, state, and national groups who know that I'm the right woman for this job. Local unions like SEIU Local 1, Cleveland Teachers Union, Local 279, and North Shore AFL-CIO have endorsed me because I'm the council member they want to work with to advance their issues, and they know that I will continue to stand up for the rights of workers in Cleveland. Young Dems and the Women's Caucus endorsed me because they know we need more young people and more women on city council and in leadership. And they know my experience has prepared me for the job. Our Revolution and Run for Something have endorsed me because they know I will fight for progress and systems level change in Cleveland to make our government more effective. What's more, I am a collaborator at my core. I have built relationships all over Cleveland that will help me be an effective councilwoman. People who have worked with me know that I will follow through on my word, lead with integrity and out of compassion for people. And for all of these reasons, I ask for your support and your endorsement, and I look forward to working with you.
Chris?
So yes, thank you, Kate, for being here tonight, and thank you for being part of such an interesting discussion. So I think that I would like to leave you all with a thought that an organizer, an African-American woman from Columbus, shared with me many years ago. She said, "Vision without action is hallucination." And that sounds kind of hokey at first. It sounds like one of those things that people say at meetings or something, but it means something. We share a lot of the same vision. We are here because we're part of the Progressive Caucus, and we could probably spend all night agreeing with each other. But if we don't start figuring out how to take our ideas and put them into action and making them happen, then we are going to lose. And I'm tired of losing. I believe that I'm the best candidate because I know how to win. I know how to bring people together and organize our community to fight to win. I have confronted City Hall. I have confronted the mayor. I have confronted banks and powerful corporate interests that want to do harm to our community. And I have won on behalf of our communities and our people and our neighborhoods. And I think that's really, really important. We could all sit around and agree with each other all night, and likely, you know, we have a good time doing it. But we have to elect somebody that's going to be able to go into City Hall and understand that it's an organizing job. There are 17 members, maybe 15, but there are currently 17 members, and you have to get people on board for policy changes and line up those votes. And that is an organizing job, and that's what I do. That's what I do specifically very, very well. So I have spent 500 hours canvassing this neighborhood. I've knocked on 5,906 doors and talked to 2,670 people. I am a listener first. I will always ask what people think about everything and try to gather that sense of mutual understanding. But then it's about fighting to win. And it's about holding people accountable. And it's about not backing down and not being afraid of the challenges that lie ahead. I've got that demonstrated record to stand up and fight for what's right, to not back down, and to do what's good for Old Brooklyn. And I will be that person. So I would definitely like to thank you for all of your time and encourage you to support me as I continue to fight for Ward 13, along with the firefighters and the construction
10
trades
seconds.
and the United Auto Workers and Jim Caucus and Sue Taylor, the former president of the Ohio Federation of Teachers, and a whole bunch more to come.
Now, if we were at a live venue, I think without cue, everybody would be standing up right now and giving these two fine candidates a huge round of applause. And since we can't do that, all right, either do this or go to the reactions and click the clap icon so we can give these candidates a huge round of applause. I just want to say, both were excellent tonight. We do not always get that in candidates forums. And I think it's safe to assume that no matter how this race turns out, that we are going to have a progressive representing Ward 13 in Cleveland City Council and representing the progressive movement very well. So thank you, Chris and Kate. And thank you, audience, for showing up. And look for that email tomorrow with all the links. And hopefully we'll see all of you soon, preferably live, but if not, maybe by Zoom again. Thank you.